Awesome. Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much for letting us in to check out the brewery. This is awesome. I love the setup you have here.
So, how did Shades end up coming about?
Well, it was back in 2008 during the last recession. Technology went in the toilet, and that's what I was in. Got laid off and didn't know what else to do.
Yeah, what a bummer.
Yeah.
I mean, that was hard times for so many people too.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the pandemic was kind of that way too. A lot of people were laid off. 2008 was the same way.
Yeah.
They hit the tech hard, with all the consulting business and everybody putting freeze on implementations of new software.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, the cost of things like that was just difficult for everyone.
Yeah, so, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had, time to make a decision. And my wife, Alexandra, said, why don't you start brewing beer, commercially. You like beer, you've been doing it at home for a ton of years.
Yeah.
People like your beer. So
it was kind of a hobby for you then?
Yeah, it was a hobby. I'd been, brewing it since the mid-90s.
Oh, wow, okay.
And so, before really there was any homebrew shops and stuff around, there wasn't really any of that. You were scrounging stuff up and putting it in buckets and, blowing up the kitchen and making a mess. There wasn't a lot of resources like there is today, with homebrew shops and classes.
Oh, it's crazy the stuff they have now.
It's a lot different.
You just buy a kit from online and you have it set up within minutes and it's already done.
Yeah, it was
just set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a lot different back then in the day. It was hard to find stuff. That was right when the internet was just getting started.
Yeah.
So people were still talking about what's a website and what's e-commerce didn't exist. And you're trying to find something, dial-up modem was slow, dial-up modem, there's no high-speed stuff. So, you just kind of figured it out as you go. And I got a kit from my parents for Christmas, and it was basically a burlap sack you stuck on the wall and threw some yeast in. And it ballooned up, and that was kind of the first experience with brewing beer at home. It was kind of not a great experience, but it was like, oh, this isn't really that hard.
Yeah.
Well, what a foundation of knowledge it'll give you doing it that way,
and I it was cool because it was something that was, it was fun. It was something to do on the side, and, you had control over it, from start to finish.
Yeah.
And you could see the process. You could see it working, and, at the end, you were like, wow, this is cool. Look at this flavor I got out of this.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I did some adjunct brewing as well. I threw fruit in stuff, raspberry wheat, and I did a maple brown ale with maple syrup in it and stuff like that. And it was rich. People weren't doing that stuff back then.
Yeah.
And one of our first beers we made, and we released at the very first City Weekly Beer Festival was a coffee stout. We released that in July, and nobody was doing coffee stout.
Yeah. I mean that.
So we did have some background in doing some weird things, and that has kind of evolved.
Yeah. Oh, I mean the coffee stout alone, what a thing that's become.
It's crazy.
I mean everybody does it nowadays.
And we don't even make one anymore.
Yeah.
We're kind of beyond that.
Yeah, well, it's become somewhat of a mainstream thing now with the stouts doing coffee or chocolate.
Yeah, and then Marcio came to us. I don't know how many years ago now. A number of years ago now. Yeah, it's amazing. It seems like yesterday. But anyway, not for him, but for me. But our first kind of foray into the sour area was with the Berliner Weiss. And that was kind of early on in the kind of the sours. That was almost 5 years ago, really. He came in to help us with the lab work and do some quality control stuff, and then
how was the reception on that when you came?
It was good overall. It was good. We made a traditional Berliner with no fruit or anything in it, and then the traditional style Berliner has like syrups and other things like that.
Yeah.
And we, instead of doing syrups, we decided to do fruit in it, and that's where our plum Berliner came from. So we are actually making the base Berliner with nothing in it and selling that here at the tap room and out at some bars and restaurants. And then we started doing the plum with the fruit in it, and that one took off, and people really liked.
Oh yeah, people love that kind of
flavor
thing.
Yeah.
and the color and whatnot, and so we discontinued, just doing the plain Berliner, and now we do the Berliner with plum in it.
Uh-huh.
And then that kind of led us down some other paths of doing some other sours, and we've done some barrel-aged sours, and we started looking at that, and then we started getting into kettle sours and actually doing all that stuff, and we won a gold in 2018 at the Great American Beer Fest in the American
Really?
Sour category for
Oh, that's awesome.
Quebec One yeast. We started using a new yeast strain.
Uh-huh.
How difficult has it been with your staples now, like the plum or something, to keep it consistent? What do you have to do for stuff like that? Or
I mean, the consistency is, kind of built into the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've upgraded our equipment so it was more computer controlled.
Okay.
We have better flow control over it in terms of volume and gallons and stuff like that. So for the most part, it's fairly consistent. When we were first making it, and Marcio can interject here, we had some batches that were higher in pH and lower in pH, and we were trying to kind of figure out where the customer wanted that beer in terms of where it would sell well.
Yeah.
You get it too tart, people are complaining. You get it too sweet, then people are like, "No, it's not a sour."
Yeah.
You have a hard time. But I think we've kind of figured out where that sweet spot is, and we've been able to kind of nail that down. And then, if we potentially miss at any point in time, we've got enough tanks and space where we can brew a second batch and then blend back together to then bring it back to the same
Oh,
level.
nice.
where
So you
it
don't
is.
lose out on all that.
So you don't lose out.
Yeah,
Okay.
that could be costly for sure.
Yeah, and that's typically what happens with bigger breweries as they grow and expand, is that typically they're brewing multiple batches and then blending back to keep the consistency.
Oh,
Like if you go to
okay.
Budweiser, they don't just brew one tank and then that's Budweiser. They
Yeah.
brew like and mix 4 or 5 or 6 different tanks to be able to make the flavors consistent.
Really?
Constantly, every time.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. I actually didn't know.
So we've been able to start doing that now as we've gotten bigger.